Sure.
Wilma out in LA, and James Heron. And they both came in asking about feet. Like where you mentioned that you mentioned that you'll look at the feet in a number of different actions. Tactically, do you how what do you prioritize, and how do you start with foot mechanics with
So,
somebody?
so actually, this is kind of an appropriate question. Cal and I talked quite a bit this last week in putting together a foot program. So basically, here's where we start. Can you stand on 2 feet and find the tripod of your foot? Tripod of your foot's going to be the base of your big toe, the ball of your big toe, the ball of your pinky toe, and your heel. And so people can see this. You can pull their shoe apart and take the instep out, and you can see where their wear patterns are. And you can see right away that, yeah, you've completely worn out the outside of your foot, and there's no wear underneath your big toe. We're really good, really fast people or really good athletes. You'll see that it's burned through the big toe, the ball of the big toe, and even the big toe. So if you can stand on 2 feet and find the tripod, that's great. So now, can you pick up that foot off the ground, and can you stand on one leg and keep that tripod? And this is where you will see people kick way off to the side or whatever. But if they seem to have it, and they say you want to make sure your foot is doing what it's supposed to be doing, can you close your eyes and stand on that foot? Great. So now if you're on that foot, probably you could have done this with 2 feet, but can you pick your toes up off the ground and just have the balls of your three balls on the ground? So that's your foot function. What a lot of people do, especially because the shoes they wear, that their shoes drag their toes in, and then their toes become that tripod. So instead of having 3 solid legs, you've got now these 4 little guys that are trying to help too. And if you have a constant flexion in that foot, the foot can't function, because the foot's no different than any other part of the body. In order to flex, you have to relax your extensors and things like that. So what happens when your foot hits the ground is ideally it hits and you roll through your little toes to your big toe to the big toe until it hooks. But if they're constantly locked, you're going to bring the arch of that foot up off the ground. And now you don't have a foot function, you have a hoof. And we're not built to have hoofs. Our musculature isn't that way. I mean, if you look at how a horse is built and what their foot looks like, the skeletons and things, it's different. So once you can establish the 3 balls with your toes up off the ground and your arch is up, this is where Cal starts talking about resetting your navicular arch, which is level 3 stuff. Can you go into an ankle rocker squat, which is, can I make my foot disappear with my knee? So you're going to squat down and it's going to hinge forward like this. And you want to get to about 70 degrees. But where people will cheat is, in order to get depth, they'll kick their hip out to the side because they don't have that. So I'll stand them up next to a door, and can you do a single leg squat without your hip punching out to the side to get depth?
Is it the hip punching out to the side that you're squatting on? So like
Yeah, same leg.
recentering the body so the foot's further underneath the center.
Yes, and so the hip will come out and the foot will drift underneath the middle, and now you have someone who runs the tightrope when they walk instead of having a hip in place. Which is a lot of times when we do the reset on the hip, that all kind of cracks back in. It just lines up really nice, and there's all kinds of film on YouTube of showing those reset patterns pre and post. So once you do that, then can you have big toe function? So what happens is, ideally what happens is when that big toe descends, it's going to lock a little bit. And so you'll get this picture, it'll kind of look like that. And when that happens, when that toe locks, it's going to shorten the foot and bring all the arches in, which now you have a shorter distance for that all to travel. And that's where you get your really springy foot. So first thing with big toe is, can you bring it back to 90 degrees? Something like that. And I know this is my hand, it doesn't work very well. But then can you go like that? And then you're going to lose some of that range of motion, but that's what you want it to look like. So real simple thing to do is, you can take your shoe off. You're going to bring your big toe back as far as you can. You're going to take your thumbnail and you're going to stick it right into the joint, that knuckle,
Yeah.
Can you fold your big toe over just like I'm doing with my thumb here?
And this is that video you made a couple months ago, right? It was kind of like how to go through this, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so we can link to that. We'll link to that video for sure.
We did. I had one kid. I actually have two kids, and they're both kind of all over the news right now. One kid runs track for me. Great kid, awesome kid. But he constantly, like Roadrunner, his legs turned over like that, but he never got any power. And so we started working with that big toe, and all of a sudden he got that foot to descend. And like yesterday, he returned a punt for 77 yards in the state semifinals and started running really well. And another kid runs in college, again, he had all this potential, but couldn't descend that big toe onto the ground. He's an OCD kid, so you give him homework, and it's like, you've done way too much. You can't do this all day, every day. And he's running these phenomenal fly 10 times right now. Phenomenal. I mean, like low nines, which for track people is really fast. He hit a 9.1. He hit 2 9.1s this summer, which is moving. And
yeah.
That's a sub. That's a low. That's 10.3, 10.4 kid.
And he's a freshman in college now.
He's
sophomore in college. Yeah.
And he's a long jumper, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's our foot. That's a good way to see if your feet are working properly. Now, how much is it going to carry over when you run? It's different for everyone. But if you think about it, if you change it a slight amount and you get more through to that big toe, more than you did before, you're going to get much better foot function and run faster times. Nobody's ever going to be perfect. But the goal is to work toward that. And minor changes will have drastic impacts.
And so with running, you're gonna with feet, you're gonna start with 2 feet. See if you can find a tripod. The tripod on each foot.
You can even bring your toes up in 2 feet and see what happens. You'll see a lot of people don't have any toe extension. They can't extend their toes.